a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 do.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're coming to us from. Gosh, don't you just love that song? I just love it. Change. When we change the way we look at things, right? The things we look at change, which is just so relevant for today. And today we've actually changed things up a bit because
Speaking of
look
change.
who's co-hosting. My name is Cheryl, and my co-host is...
Marg. And today we're interviewing Barbara.
Barbara Schreiner Trudell. Barbara Jean. Let's call her Barbara Jean because that always sounds so much nicer.
For a moment.
Say again?
We'll call her Barbara Jean for a moment. I'm going to call her something else in a few.
Yeah, we don't want to call her BJ, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, before we begin, I'm going to open up with Mark. Stop it. I'm going to open up with the land acknowledgement, which is very serious. So let us take in a deep breath because we want to acknowledge that we work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many First Nations as we gather on Turtle Island, which is where this show is coming to you from. The North Americas. We as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We include the Métis, the Inuit, the Haudenosaunee, and all other indigenous peoples. We also acknowledge that we continue to grow and expand on these lands, and that there is still unresolved and dangerous inequality and discrimination towards many groups in our communities all over the world. By making these acknowledgements, we strive to be allies, and we take an active part, or we try to at least, in reconciliation. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Mm-hmm. And I just have to say, before you go on, Mark, I love that flag that's hanging behind you, right? Because that just speaks so much to, many different paths, but ultimately we are one. So,
thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. Today we're going to be interviewing Barbara, and I will be bringing her on as Reverend Barbara shortly. And today we're going to be talking about midwifing peace. And to set the stage, I'm going to read a poem by Gandhi. I offer you peace. I offer you love. I offer you friendship. I see your beauty. I hear your need. I feel your feelings. My wisdom flows from the highest source. I salute that your source in you. Let us work together for unity and peace. Mahatma Gandhi. Thank you for those words. As I mentioned today, thank you. We're going to be interviewing Barbara Schreiner Trudell. Barbara wears many hats and has traveled many journeys. She sits on the Unity Canada Board, the Toronto People's AIDS Board, New Thought Media Board. She's going to speak to us from her life experience, and new life experience is playing the piano. She's a new friend to me. She's a reverend. She's a wife. She's a mom. And I understand that she wakened to new understanding and works to bring joy to the world. Could you come to us, Barbara, and give us your perspective as a Reverend Barbara?
And I just want to say, with all that you introduced Barbara as, the two words that came to my mind were phenomenal woman.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's interesting to be on this side of the show.
Yeah. So
I do like the idea of midwifing piece like that.
yes, I was just going to say, I don't recall if I mentioned that that's what we would be talking about today,
Yeah,
with
actually, Mark
everything that's
did. Yeah.
with everything that's going on. Thank you, Mark. We felt that this was definitely a challenging conversation because of the fear that's out there, and it's not just in one place right now; it's spreading all over. And so, how do we address that? How do we change that and change our thinking?
I'm just going to speak before you do, Barbara, if you don't mind. Sorry to cut you off, but
Let you speak later. Like, just give us a few.
I just want to say that I plead totally ignorant in world politics, so I may be silent for a while. And a recent experience and a good friend taught me a lesson just recently. I watched a video, and the video was on someone's experience of being a Jewish woman. And I listened to this video, and my heart felt for her. And I felt like I was living her experience and had to say what she believed her truth is. Well, I guess it was her truth for her, but it wasn't my truth. And so what my friend shared with me, Cheryl, was everybody has their own experience, and it's okay to listen to those experiences, but not take them on as my own. So
Exactly.
I'm going to sit back and listen now.
Thanks, Mom.
Oh, thank you. Well, we definitely are living in very interesting times right now. And I know from my congregation and different people that I associate with or work with that there is a lot of fear. People don't know what to expect next. Things that are happening around the world, whether it's in our own countries or other places, are atrocities, and there's genocide, and it's really quite difficult to deal with. And one of the challenges we're faced with is, how do we talk about it? How do we stand for what is truly right and good? Because each one of us has our own perception of what's going on. And so if we take sides, then we actually become part of the problem when we take sides. And as a spiritual woman who works with a diverse group of people, for me, it's really important to remind myself over and over again that we all live, move, and have our being within this universe. We are all playing some part in it. And the minute I take one side over another, then I have actually divided the whole, which can't really be divided anyway, but that's the experience that happens, is division. That causes more anger, frustration. It causes them and us, others. There's so many people who live with that other experience. They're other than everybody else. And I think we're going to create more problems by doing that. But if we can feel what we're feeling, because I hear you, Marg, about that video that you watch, because I think it's the same one I watch, and it's heartbreaking to watch what's
Mhm.
going on around the world. There's no other way to say it. It really is sad. And for me, I don't understand the violence.
Mhm.
I don't understand why I have to have people agree with me and believe what I believe and
Yeah.
walk the path that I'm walking. We have 8 billion people on the planet. What if we all are unique and special? What if we all have our own view of things? What if we could coexist like that
Yeah.
beautiful flag on your wall, Mark? Like,
Mhm.
I think we have to find a way to stop the separation.
So I'm gonna try and be real, and not that you're not being real, but
Mhm.
when I hear myself talk like that, Barbara, and think like that, which is I agree with you 100%, but I think we've just got to go a little bit deeper in
Mhm.
recognizing that nobody actually knows anything.
That's
People
right.
have small bits of information and they
Yeah.
make these decisions about who's right and who's wrong. And then they spread all this information, and try and get people on their team to back
There's
their belief system, and this is the big thing that for me is is quite scary. And I want people to talk about this and to think about it and understand it. That, this video that we're talking about, and thank you for mentioning that, Mark. This was actually, she's a well known actress sharing her experience in the United States about being Jewish and how unsafe her son feels about going to university, and this, that, their experience. And being Jewish myself, I felt that I wanted to share that because people don't understand the Jewish experience. And it's just another form of discrimination, like a discrimination against gays and lesbians, discrimination against race. It's just another form of discrimination and dehumanizing people,
dehumanizing. That's a
right?
big one.
And it's the people that are fighting as well, in some sense, dehumanize people, because otherwise, how do
They'll
you
have
kill
to.
someone,
Yeah.
right? And so it's these kinds of things that I really think people should be talking about, rather than, oh, so you shared that, but what's happening is wrong. Look at what the Israelis are doing, and I agree 100%. That's not the point. What I was trying to do was to acknowledge a personal experience that I can relate to. Um,
Absolutely.
and when you look at what's going on around the world with all the demonstrations, you have Israelis and Jewish people who are protesting for peace and who are protesting for a ceasefire. And then you have the others who are protesting to kill the Jews, basically. Not just Israel. It's not just about Israel. And again, I'm just giving little bits of information, and these are bits and pieces that don't make up a whole story,
Well,
don't make
it's,
up a whole reality. And
no, they
so
don't. Yeah.
I really invite people, not just when we're talking about it, when they're talking about it, but to even share their thoughts about that. That I don't believe we really actually have a right to make that choice of taking sides.
But people are doing that very thing, which is
Absolutely.
exactly what sort of escalates the overall fear. It escalates the war model.
Yeah.
My life journey has been one of exploring this idea of war. I have been looking at it since I was a small child because it's the most insane thing that human beings could participate in. And so, in trying to understand, like, and I'm talking from a child perspective,
Yeah.
7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, watching war movies, Bridge Over the River Kwai and things like that, getting into grade 6 and grade 7 and starting to read books like the Nuremberg trials and Mein Kampf and all of these things to try and get an understanding as to why adult human beings would think that by killing someone they will get to a place of peace. That was my query as a young child. As I got into my teenage years, I kept reading and reading and reading. I'm reading the bombing of Hiroshima. I'm reading about Pearl Harbor. I'm watching movies, and I'm looking at all this thinking, this is insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a new result, that is insane. When we fight with one another, and this for me is, it doesn't matter if it's, family members fighting, if it's neighbors fighting, if it's different races against each other, country against each other. There's this, I really believe that our personal self-hatred is what we project into the world. If in fact we could come to a place of learning about ourselves, if we could figure out what our authentic voice and gift is, and if we could breathe life into that and start to live from there, I think we would find the possibility of peace starting to grow. As long as we are fighting over religion or politics or country borders or who's got what rights and who doesn't, we are in an insane loop that has been going on since the beginning of time. This isn't new. Right now, there's 110 different wars happening on our planet. So we look at that and go, why are we doing this? What is it that we hope to accomplish in the end? And I really think the only win here is the people who manufacture weaponry.
Yeah.
They're
So-
making billions.
So I often speak about the fact that I can't do anything. I guess I could get on a plane and go to a country that's at war. I don't see there's going to be a benefit in that. But what can I do here? And Barbara, we mentioned when we first opened that you've had many life experiences. So we as a whole, not necessarily we, the three of us today, our life experiences and liken them to war.
I think so. Yeah. When I think about war in a particular place, so if we were to look at the human body, like my human body, okay, and let's say I develop a form of cancer. Maybe I have lung cancer, right? So breathing becomes difficult, living becomes difficult, but I'm doing it, right? And I'm working to heal it. So I'm fighting to kill off the cancer, to beat it out of me or whatever. I think that is like the microcosm of the macro. I think what we're seeing around the world, these pockets, which are not so far away, some of them are in our own backyard, but these pockets of war that are going on in the world is really very similar as the cancer attacking my body, as the war attacking a piece of Mother Earth and humanity. So it's like that's the macro. My body would be the micro. So what can I do to make a difference? For starters, no separation, no blaming. The minute I start blaming somebody else, the minute I start pointing fingers, going, you're the one who's wrong, right there, we've eliminated the possibility at arriving at a peaceful resolution or some kind of a compromise that would allow us to coexist. So, what I can do personally is my own inner work. If I fall in love with me, if I can begin to love who I am, the way I'm created, then I have within me the ability to share that love out into the world. And what that actually means is because I accept me, I can accept you. Even if you're have different ideas and thoughts, maybe politically or religious, doesn't matter because I am solid in me. And so it's easy to accept you. I may not agree with you, but I don't have to kill you.
Yeah, and I hear you, and I think that's wonderful, and I agree. From a new thought standpoint, we all believe that that's how we change the world is by one person at a time, and that person is me. If I
Yes.
work on me, that's actually a huge gift to the world, right?
It is.
The reality is right now. And I'm just I'm thinking of if I had family or friends watching from both sides, from
Mhm.
all sides,
All
right?
sides.
All
Yeah.
sides, because and we don't even talk about Syria anymore. I mean, look at Syria. He killed over 230,000 of his own people. We still talk a little bit about Ukraine, but suddenly, it's where the media takes us that puts the focus
Which is
on
never
which
truly
war.
honest.
Exactly. And so we as people are being swayed. We are being controlled,
Manipulated is the word.
manipulated,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, I really want us to recognize these dangers, to recognize these different realities. There's no one reality because we spoke, we talk about it all the time. It comes from our perspective. And
Always.
every Jewish person, every Arab person, every Christian, every Sikh, whatever you want to name, everybody in the
Woman.
world will have a different perspective about the same thing that we would be talking about, coming
Absolutely.
from their upbringing, their conditioning, so it's learning to respect that. It's learning to not have to be right.
There's a big one.
It's huge, right? That
It
we
is
want to
huge.
be
Yeah.
right. It's learning that I am you and you are me, and
Mhm.
learning to see each other as human beings.
Yes.
What if I was in that situation? How would I feel? How would I be? Just having a little bit of empathy.
Well, and that's where, when we've come to a place of really accepting who we are, we do have empathy and
Mhm.
we have a willingness not only to empathize, but to actually put some action behind that. Where, somebody around us is having some kind of a challenge. And so we step up to support in the
Yes,
moment when
yes,
that's needed.
yes,
And it's not necessarily going to be comfortable,
yes.
right? Like that's the key that
And
we're looking at.
that's a great point, because what that made me think about was we don't have to get involved in the fight, in the violence, in the war, but we can have conversations with our brothers and sisters, which I know a lot of Jewish communities and Muslim communities are coming together and doing,
Mhm.
right? And they are standing up and saying to their people that this is not okay, to protest and take sides and just all these hate crimes that are being committed, and things like that, right? So it's actually um, mirroring behavior
Mhm.
like that. Rabbis and imams coming together, different communities coming together, rather than being at war with each other, when last week they were neighbors and were swapping recipes and food. But all of a
That's
sudden now they're enemies, right?
It's one of the reasons why I don't watch the news, because the news the news of late is fully editorialized, and depending on the network that you're watching will depend on the slant that
Yes.
is going to take. So if we are looking for facts, I was trained as a journalist before I went into ministry. It's a natural progression. We do real estate, and then we do, we go to school and become a journalist, and then we throw all of that away and we become a minister. That's the path.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
5 husbands in between. But the
Life.
journey.
Okay,
Full
wait, wait,
life.
wait, wait, wait. Back up with that one. 5
Sorry,
husbands
what?
in between.
Yeah.
Was there any, conversations around the table that could have been sort of warlike that
Oh, yeah, there was a war. There was a couple of
and
them.
and was there anybody on the outside that could have come in and saved you or
Oh, no. I had to save myself. Yeah, it's interesting, because when we look at any form of violence, it's the journey that we're on. Because what I discovered when I left a marriage that was very violent, when I left that marriage, it took me a little while to get past the anger, the blame, he's so horrible, awful,
Mhm.
that whole thing. And it's all his fault. And it's got nothing to do with me. And he's terrible. To a place of going, okay, wait a minute. You had your first marriage was a violent marriage. Your second marriage just wasn't much of anything. Your third marriage, violent, way more violent even than the first one. And so you walk out of that and you go, okay, I've been married 3 times. 2 of them were very violent. What's the common denominator? Me. So I had to take a look at the fact that I had a part in this. Now, my part, I'm not going to condone his behavior because it was bad.
Mhm.
But my part was I put myself in the room. I married him knowing he had a drinking problem. I stayed with him after much abuse had happened. So sometimes when we get in these warlike settings, whether it's in our home life or it's countries, what happens is that we are, we're in this familiar place. I was raised in a household where my dad would rage and my mom would hit us. So this is what I'm familiar with.
Mhm.
So putting myself in the room with somebody who's abusive was kind of a familiar place to be. So it really took me taking responsibility for putting myself in the room. And I made a clear decision when I did that I would never do it again, that I would see the red flags, that I would walk away.
So before we go on, because that's a great point, taking responsibility, right? And what is my responsibility?
Exactly.
What is our responsibility? So let's take a short break. We're halfway through. Gosh, it goes so quickly. And we can pick up where we left off when we come back. So don't go away. Stay, like, share, and we'll see you in a moment.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Home Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle. as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
Welcome back. Before we move on to responsibility, again, I just want to acknowledge that I have family and friends in Israel. I really am so saddened by the lives that are being lost in Gaza. We have no idea. I mean, they are in the Arab world, they are Shiites, and I don't remember all the names. People don't even know that they fight against each other. In Israel, and Jews around the world have experienced discrimination and have, there are people that deny the Holocaust. I mean, can you deny the Holocaust? It was horrific. My grandfather left Lithuania in the 30s because of the Russian Revolution. And the way Lithuanians were towards Jews and everybody, I suppose, across Europe at that time. I think what I'm trying to say is that we talk about fear and we talk about eliminating fear in ourselves. And that's not as easy to do with the history that we have.
But it is the history that we have, and we can't change that.
Exactly.
But
exactly. And it needs to be acknowledged. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not just about Jewish people. This is about slavery. This is about, war in all over the world. But I know that my family in Israel have children fighting in the war, mm-hmm. and they feel like the rest of the world is against them.
And that's not true. Yeah. But there is a lot of hatred, and
absolutely,
we have to resolve that.
Absolutely. And when you have religion, I'm just going to say this, Hamas had cameras on them when they were murdering and burning and beheading children and people. And they were shouting, praise God, Allah Akbar, while they were doing that. And I don't know how anybody can do that in the name of God.
Well, I don't know how anybody could do that, period. But
and religion, I just want to say all religion, all war is often based on religion because it's a belief system, right? My belief is better than yours. I don't know.
Well, it can
the
be
thing about it is that I've heard Hamas's son talk about Hamas and what it was like when he grew up. And he is saying that people don't understand, and that if this is not dealt with, this is not just a Middle East problem. This is a worldwide issue. And I don't think people understand that. And
And
so taking sides anyway, I don't want to take sides. All I'm trying to say is I want to understand more. I want to be more compassionate for all involved. I know that my family will say, how can you say that? Because we are fighting for our lives. And so are the people on the other side fighting for their lives. They're not fighting, actually. They're dying because of the people that are fighting, who don't see the people they're fighting against as human.
I think it, it comes right back to the only way that I'm going to project hatred in the world comes from my own self-loathing, that I feel like I have to control, manipulate, or
I
adjust the
don't know,
world
though.
needs.
I really don't know, Barbara. I don't know. When you have a lived experience of something, if some people can relate to that, I struggle with that, because it's not that they don't like themselves. I'm talking about
No,
citizens.
it's
I'm not
self-hatred.
talking about.
This is self-hatred that allows us to do. In order to do those type of atrocities, there is something inside of us that is fighting to be seen, heard, felt,
So it's
whatever.
more about fear. It's about
It's all
fear
about,
of being
all, all about fear.
misunderstood or not being seen for
Well,
who.
even look at North America. We've got white people who are angry when immigrants come in because they're going to take our jobs. They're going to,
Yeah.
cause our children to believe differently. Look at the transgender community. Oh, this person's trans and they go to my school. Well, now somebody's going to make my kid a trans. Like, there's all of this stuff going on because we're so caught in fear. And we are not going to resolve these challenges from the level of consciousness that created them. We have to go beyond that. And that's where I love the prayer by Gandhi, why I love what the Dalai Lama has to say, that only way we arrive at peace is to find it in our hearts
Yes.
to love. There can't be an other. The minute we put other, you, them, they, like we go to that place of, oh, that person, that group, those, that political party, that religion. The minute we start doing the separating thing, it all comes from fear, and it results in a fight to survive. And the fight to survive is my personal identity. I want to save my personal identity, my personal agenda, my personal way of being. And I don't know how to do that and be okay with you.
Yes.
And that's the dilemma, right?
Yes.
Is how
So
do
I
we
agree with all
choice?
of that, which
Even
doesn't
Mark,
boil down to self-hatred for me. It was the fear and the othering and the
if
survival
you
and
really love you, like not as a narcissist, but you have a deep, passionate love and acceptance of who you are, you will find it quite easy to be kind in the world that you live in.
yes, there I do agree with
That's
you, because
Mark
you will
had
be at
her,
peace.
yeah, Mark had her hand up. She was trying to squeak in
Trying to
here.
squeeze in.
Yeah. So I have a question, but I'm just going to, in the book, in the shelter with Padraig, I'm going to not do a justice to his name. He talks about this young 10, 11-year-old girl who says to him, and Padraig is a Buddhist, I think, or Catholic, he's a teacher. And the little girl says to him, why did God make Protestants? So and so he asks her further about why she's asking that question, and further down in the story, he talks about fear. Like she's grown up with the Belfast story, with the belief that Protestants are a threat to her, and interesting. So how do we live in this world? How do we not be an active bystander? We're watching whatever happens, and we want to be compassionate.
Mark, before we
Equal.
go there, I want you to repeat that because I think that is very important. When you said she's grown up believing that she's not safe, or just repeat what
Yeah.
what he said, because
So-
I really think for me that is so important for all of us to recognize that this is about how we have grown up and taught to believe.
Right. So she's grown up in Ireland, in Belfast, and she has the belief that Protestants are a danger to her, to the extent that she asks Padraig, why did God, like, how could God make Protestants?
Why would
And
God
so,
make somebody who's going to harm me?
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
And, you
and
know,
the answer go again, because that was key for me.
There, I didn't get into an answer. It was
Oh.
just that was her belief. He further questioned her where her belief came from, and she played soccer really well. And he says, actually, I know a number of Protestants who would love for you to be on their team. And she's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And then later on, he is in the podcast and he says, well, actually, that was a lie. I didn't know anybody, but he shifted her perspective, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
well,
Exactly.
we're trained to hate. We're trained to fear. We're trained to be racist.
Mm-hmm.
And we get there, well, just like that little girl didn't, I mean, if you put a Protestant and a Catholic side by side, you wouldn't know one from the other.
Mm.
There's no way to tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of look the same. They breathe air, they eat food, they have shelter, right? They exist, right?
My
And
dad and my grandfather.
there you go. So the challenge is that when we're raising our children, whatever our fears, in the Bible, it says the sins of the father. Well, what they're talking about is just the learned behavior, because we accept the stories that we're told, right? We're taught, my dad taught me that Indigenous people are drunken Indians who never do anything, right? Now, I don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But when that thought entered my mind a few years ago, I was appalled at myself for having the thought. But what I realized is where it came from, and I was able to change it.
Mm-hmm.
We have been trained to fear. I mean, I remember when my kids were little, the big thing, stranger danger, stranger danger. There's more danger sometimes in your own home than there is out on the street. So again, it's a false way of sort of shifting perspective. And I think we have to individually and collectively take a look at our own self and decide, who am I going to be in this world? And what is it that I want to create in this world? Do I want us to be fighting each other? Do I want us killing each other? Do I want school shootings? Do I want, trans people murdered because, I
Well,
don't
I think we know
understand?
that nobody wants that. So
There are people who do want that,
Oh.
and they're the ones who are doing the very thing, right?
yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to fight for my right to exist. So how do I do that? And that's
Yeah.
really what the fight is, but it's coming from such a backward place. We have to acknowledge, like, we're teaching a class right now, Life Loves You.
Mhm.
And it was a book written by Louise Hay and Robert Holden. And in that book, it's like, if life loves me,
Mhm.
then life is for me, not against me. And if that becomes what I truly believe, then it sort of flows that I am going to find it in my heart. I'm going to find a way to meet people that I don't understand or don't know yet.
Yes.
And I'm going to find space to receive them in a way that honors whatever our differences are, rather than you know, I remember reading Michelle Obama's recent book, and she talked about being the other.
Mm.
Michelle Obama, for crying out loud,
Yes,
you
yeah,
know, first lady, and she's
yeah,
feeling separate than.
yeah,
Why? Because of the color of her skin.
exactly.
We have
And so what you're saying, I think, is absolutely, totally, 100% correct. And I will add, we need to be doing this with our children. We need
absolutely
to
too.
wash our conditioning out of the system,
Mm.
right? And so that's a big part of it for me. Are we repeating the sins of the father? How are we bringing our children up? How are we talking to our
Exactly.
children to see the world? And I think that's really another important thing for all of us to consider. And I will also say we have to do it so consciously, because I'm going to speak for myself. I am so conditioned. You know, I'm not just saying by my family, but by the world, by
By
the
the world.
media, by the school I went to, the society I lived in, you know, all those kinds of things. And so we have to be able to have that awareness and to acknowledge it before we can change it.
Mm.
Well, I think part of it is finding out what, you know, what is my personal path, you know, what is the thing that matters to me. And when I can find my voice, it gives me an opportunity then to be willing to share that
Mhm.
moving forward. But also, it's an opportunity to really look at, what do I believe for real, and what beliefs are running my life that I'm just becoming aware of.
Mhm.
And when we start to see what the beliefs actually are, it doesn't take long to know, well, you know, between the media and our teachers and the system that we live in, we have been conditioned to accept certain things that I don't know why we accept them, but we do. And I think part of it, as human beings, we have not realized that the power actually is in the base.
Mhm.
There are more of us than there is the powers that be that tend to be
Right.
running some of the things that are
Right.
going on. But we play small and go into agreement with the powers that be because we're afraid to stand against them.
Because we don't know how to handle it.
Mhm.
Exactly. We haven't been trained to deal with conflict in a productive way. We haven't been taught how to communicate effectively. We go to school for all these years and we don't learn the basic skills that would actually really serve us moving forward,
Mhm.
like how to communicate in conflict.
Mhm.
There is a way to have a conflict without fighting.
Mhm.
And
A
that,
disagreement.
well, I can
Well,
agree with.
disagreements cause conflict, right? But we get into, for me, when we reach conflict, we're becoming combative. So how do we deal with how do we deal with things?
No, it can be two differing opinions, but
Mhm.
instead of coming at it from a combative stance, I can go, that's a very different way to believe.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
could be curious and have a desire to try to understand you. Now,
Yes.
the thing is, we're never going to understand each other,
No.
right? Like, I'm not in your head, you're not in mine. So there's no way to fully understand,
Yeah.
Thank
but we can
goodness.
appreciate. Yeah, exactly. We can appreciate and we can, you know, empathize and we can support. We can be
Yes.
allies. We can work together to create a new reality. I think we need more women running the world.
Oh, I agree, 100%.
Because I think women are less likely to immediately go to violence. I think, and I mean, not all, but most women, I think,
Yeah.
have a softer edge where it's like, how can we resolve this in another way?
There's a
Could be.
video I watched yesterday, and it's a Muslim woman, a Jewish woman, and a Christian woman.
Mhm.
And they're singing this song, and they like in the desert, and they're walking from different areas, coming together and smiling and singing this song,
Yeah.
you know, about this is what mothers want or don't. I can't remember exactly. And
Yeah.
mothers don't want their children to be fighting each other. Doesn't matter what religion you are.
Some mothers.
Yeah.
So I had a conversation because I don't understand war. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and her brother-in-law is an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces, and his son went off to Afghanistan. And I was like, oh, I would just hate that. I said, how are they doing with that? And she said, oh, they're very proud.
Mm,
They're very happy that he's
Mm.
gone to war.
mm.
And I'm like, whoa.
And again, it's belief
It's-
systems, right? When you believe that you can die and go to heaven and have I don't know how many wonderful women.
Well, I'm not sure that this family believes that. They're not religious people, but
But there are people that believe
There are-
that, right?
that do
And also
believe
are willing to die proudly because of
Yeah.
that.
And there's some who just politically go, I'm saving my country. I'm
Yeah,
not sure
yeah.
how Canada
They
is
have a
safe by
cause.
killing people in Afghanistan, but that's the story. See,
Yeah.
we tell stories to ourselves that give us a level of comfort so
Yeah.
that we can do the things that we think we need to do. And one of the questions that I sometimes wonder is, whose should am I living? Like whenever I go, oh, I should do this, or I should, whose should,
Mm,
right? Because if I'm saying should, I think there's a
Mm.
no in there. But if I feel like I have to do it, where did the should come from in the beginning? Who
Mm.
brought that in?
mm.
Like that's the piece for me. Now
Yeah.
we're getting to the end here, and we have a video we want to show at the
Oh,
end. So
yes, we do. Thank you for the reminder, guest Barbara Jean. This is, before we show it, I want to acknowledge that this is a really difficult conversation
it is.
for anybody to have.
And there's
And
no answers.
there are no answers, but I do believe that it's a conversation that we could be having to at least try and understand ourselves, understand each other, and try and shift our perspectives so that we can choose to be better. And for me, what I'm also understanding is that actually saying less is more. Because when we get into, that conversation again, and people are sharing different points of view, it becomes combative.
It can. It really can.
Maybe part B is answers.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Not a bad idea. It is a conversation that one could actually have a series on, because it's
exploring different people's viewpoints and how tied we are to them. Like
and I think again as well, to be able to respect their different points of view doesn't mean we have to agree.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we have to be enemies. But yeah, let's take this time, because it's a beautiful song, and it was put together about 6 years ago by a guy in Haifa, in Israel, where he also brought together people from all different faiths to sing this song, which is really ultimately, I think, what most of us are working towards one day.
Thank you both for your voices today and for sitting in the seats you sat in.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for being such an awesome host. Barbara Jean, you're a wonderful guest, as well as a co-host, and I'm just so grateful to be here today.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you.
One day. Isn't that beautiful? So, in closing, Barbara, do you have something you can share with us to take away today?
I think love is the answer, and that is, and for me, love means oneness. It means connection and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we could just choose love, take a breath, take a pause, choose love.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I think we're going to close on that note. And I invite anybody who's watching, if you think that this is an important conversation that needs to be shared, please share, like, and hopefully we will see you again next week. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Cheryl. Bye.
Is there anything, Mark, you would like to say in closing?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I tend to sometimes do that. But again, thanks, everyone, and see you next week.
See you next time. Bye.